list of those things. But I mean, I grew up. My dad was in the Navy. My grandpa was in the Navy. Neither of them were lifers. They did like 5 years in the Navy. But always grew up knowing they had done that, and I like looked up to that and respected that. And it was, dad's old like sea stories and nothing crazy, but just like fun stuff. Like the idea, it's just like the kind of shit you want to do as a young man. Of like just, the opportunities of getting out and seeing the world and like feeling like you can do something that matters and contributes in a way. So that was always appealing to me. And then I think by the time come around, like when you're like 16 and then like realistically have to start thinking like, what am I going to do? That was kind of what popped in my head.
Yeah, dude, and you're like, all right, am I either going to be in a fucking office in a cubicle or maybe go see the world, maybe do something cool?
Yeah. And like I think at that time, you think maybe a little smaller. Not that the military is like a small move at all, but
that's like
like the options
that you have.
Yeah, like me doing what I do now, that was not at all even like within my scope of possibilities. So I think if I had to realize, no, actually, I'm really glad I did the military and I enjoyed that, but it definitely wasn't for me as a career.
What year did you join?
I did 2012 to 2018. So 6 years in the Navy.
How old are you?
I'm 34 now.
Okay, you're still a young guy.
Yeah.
Nice. So who do you think killed JFK?
I think it was the CIA with possible mafia.
You tell me your theory.
Well.
Tell me the theory.
I don't have a strongly developed theory. I do think that it wasn't a lone gunman.
All right.
I mean, also the way I can take in information and I remember it to the degree that I can develop a feeling about it. But then you asking me and having me give you like an intelligent response of all of the reasons why, that's not going to come out of me. But looking at what Kennedy was talking about and doing at the time, like, as much as I believe in the American spirit and the ideals of this country, and I do love that, I do not trust the government, so.
And then, especially after COVID, man, like we saw all this push, all this bullshit. And then you're like, oh, so you're going to tell us that a lone gunman killed JFK?
Yeah.
And so I had a theory about it. Well, I guess I went down a deep rabbit hole, man.
I love when getting into JFK assassination 2 minutes in. That's great.
So there's a video I saw recently that it's Lee Harvey Oswald before he got shot. And I don't know if this was in like AI mix. I think it's legit. But he's in handcuffs being led through a building, and he's saying, like, I don't know what I'm being arrested for. I work in this book depository. So he's saying that I didn't shoot the president. I'm a proxy, whatever he was saying. He shot a couple minutes later. But have you seen the Zapruder film, like the unedited?
No, I don't. Well, I don't know. I've watched like documentaries on the JFK assassination.
So the full tape though, where you see his head getting blown off.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it, and it lands in Jackie's lap. Yeah, I've seen that.
Dude, so I was running a club for like a college students, and I did a lesson on JFK assassination, and I opened up the class. It was like 30 kids. I'm like, all right, 18-year-olds. We're going to start with the Zapruder film. Who's seen it? And so I put it on the TV.
What was the basis of this class? What was this class like supposed to be before you?
So it was a Republicans like group.
Okay.
And I was their little ringleader.
Okay, this checks out then.
Of course. And so I like deviated from politics because it's all owned by the same people and just went right into conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And so I opened it up and showed that film. But it's crazy because some people say that the driver shot him. Because in that clip, it looks like the driver kind of pulls back and shoots him. But if you look at the video, he gets shot in the neck once. So he's driving in the video, he grabs his throat, and then like a second and a half later, he gets shot in the head. But the angle that shot's coming at is different from the shot he got shot in the neck. So he gets shot almost right in front, like in the neck. And then the angle of getting shot in the head comes from a totally different angle. Mm-hmm. So whether it's Lee Harvey Oswald or not, just the idea of there being one shooter, like that's already ballistically impossible.
Yeah. And then I know the way the bullet appeared in the autopsy room was like basically like a non-shot bullet, like the way the ballistics seemed like post, you know what I'm talking
about?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I just know there's enough like fuckery around the whole situation that the official story obviously is not what happened. So,
And then you had the Warren Commission, the people that were investigating it. I forgot his name now, but so JFK took over, I think, after Eisenhower, and he appointed his brother Bobby Kennedy as the Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time frame, the Bay of Pigs invasion, all of that was happening.
Right.
And so that was all led by the CIA. They were trying to fund these militia groups in Cuba to revolt against Castro to then go in and kill him. And I think it was while the Bay of Pigs invasion was happening, the White House gets a call from the CIA director. He's like, hey, we need air support. It's an open war now. We need air support here on the beaches in Cuba. JFK's like, what the fuck? It's the first time I heard about this because it was greenlit by Eisenhower the year prior before he took office. Mm-hmm. So that fails because JFK says, no, we're not starting this war. We're not giving you this open arms. And so he fires the current director of the CIA. Forgot his name. About a year after that happens, JFK is assassinated. Who's appointed to lead the Warren Commission? The CIA director that he fired. Seems like a little weird conflict of interest.
Yeah.
But you don't know, man.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't know, and I wouldn't say I do, but I would. Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion where I'm mostly don't trust most like main stories at this point. And I think, yeah, like you said, like a lot of people, especially, you know, after COVID and seeing things that were blatant lies and
then you're in the military, like your time in the military, you realize that this military isn't this all knowing, like perfect entity.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had a different perspective when I joined than I do now, for sure. But yeah, it makes me think about things like if my son were to join the military, like would I want to support that or not? Mm-hmm. So I don't exactly know. So, I mean, and with that, I mean, I do think there's still a lot of honorable and admirable things that the U.S. military does.
Oh, of course.
But there's also enough bullshit that, you know, I would not be worth my son's life potentially. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing that I would weigh at this point.
Yeah, especially when you realize, like now we're seeing in real time the proxy wars, how much money we're giving to these foreign countries for what?
Yeah.
And now we're going to send our kids over to fight this war for politicians again, just like Vietnam or these other scenarios.
Yeah.
So anyways, why'd you pick EOD? Just wanted to deviate. I just couldn't wait to ask about JFK.
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically, I went into the Navy with a BUDS contract. So I went to BUDS and then I quit BUDS. And then
So tell me about that. What happened?
Really fortunate that I had an EOD contract. I mean, it's fucking hard. It sucks. And yeah, I mean, dude, there's a lot that I think about now going back. And I mean, the reality of it was that I was not prepared to go and do what it takes to be successful at that endeavor. Were
you early 20s this time?
Yeah, I was 22. And you know, I was pretty straight on a path, like through high school. And then like in college, I kind of got, I would say, quite distracted and indulgent, around like 20, and really lost sight of my long-term goals. But like that had still been in place. And so it was like still there and like the path that I was driving towards, but I certainly was not doing what I needed to do in order to accomplish those goals.
Because you were in ROTC in college, but then at a period you got out and then focused on bartending and...
Yeah. So yeah, Corey and I are friends, so we've chatted in the past and stuff. But yeah, that's exactly. So I got a, I actually was looking at right at end of high school, I was looking at just enlisting in the military. Mm-hmm. You know, and I really, like I said, my dad was in, but even by the time I was born, my dad had already gotten out of the military. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't know the ins and outs of how everything worked. So I didn't understand even enlisted and commission, how that whole structure works. So I was just like, I want to go in the military. So I went and talked to a recruiter, and actually got lucky that I had a really great recruiter that I initially spoke to. And he recognized, he's like, oh man, like you have really good grades and like you can go to college. And I was like, well, I want to be in the military. I don't really know, like, I don't want to go to college because like the job I want to do is in the military. And he's like, well, you can do both kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So he kind of opened my eyes, and he wound up, I mean, kind of at, you know, he didn't benefit from this, but he sort of lost an enlisted candidate and then got me to ROTC. So this guy like really helped me out. But then so I wound up going ROTC. So I got a ROTC scholarship.
And so you went to Buds, right? When you joined after you got out of college?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So went into college and then was like in ROTC, and the program just kind of sucked. Like I got there and there was this one other, there wasn't really anybody like going towards like special operations. And even like the head shed, to the degree, like the colonel that like ran the program, like would like talk down about like SEALs and naval special operations. Like, he's like, oh, these guys are cowboys and they think they do. And so like, I don't know, I just felt like I had like no support in like pursuing what I wanted to do. There was one guy there who was a prior Navy diver who was commissioning as an EOD tech. And so he, in my first semester there, Jason Tucker, who's like, we're still friends now. I just ran into him at a Padres game a few weeks ago, actually. But he was the man. So he kind of helped me and guided me. And actually at the time he was like, dude, you should go EOD. Like it's better. Like you'll like it. And I was like, no. Just because I was, you know, as a kid and you know what you know. And
the shiny thing is
I had read Lone Survivor and I thought that was sick. So he was there and that was great. But then like basically he was just there my first semester. He graduated, got commissioned. And then I was like kind of on my own. And like as a freshman, they were like, yeah, you're in charge of like the spec war programmers. And then there was like no one else really, even no other even really students that were trying to go that direction either. So I sort of had to seek outside mentorship. And then pretty much like all the people that I wound up speaking to were like, dude, honestly, like if you want to go and like do the job, like whether it's SEAL, EOD, like any sort of special ops, like if you go as an officer, you're going to get to do the job. And if you want to stay in as a career, you're going to get to do the job for like 4, 6, maybe 8 years if you're lucky. And then you're going to shift to an admin role and you're going to be riding a desk. And like it was not connected. And like multiple people were telling me this information is like, honestly, you should go finish your degree, have that, and then enlist, and you can always commission down the road. And then you can do the job, like actually operate and do the job for as long as you want. And then if you want to commission, then you can decide to ride a desk. So I was like, all right. And I'm like, this, like, it was just like it was a non-supportive environment. I just didn't really, I mean, I had some buddies in there that were awesome, like mostly guys that were going into the Marine program. But like, as far as like the head shed and the leadership, like no support at all. So I was like, yeah, this sucks. Like, I'm going to bounce. I'm just going to be a regular college student for the last 2 years, and then I'm going to enlist. So that's ultimately what I wound up doing.
So now with hindsight being 2020, do you wish you would have continued and then joined as an officer?
I mean, not even, you know, like I had a Florida, like Florida has a Bright Future scholarship program where, if you have good grades and good SAT, like you have a 100% tuition paid for. So I already had that as well. Like I didn't really need like the ROTC scholarship. I mean, in hindsight, maybe I would have just like done OCS and but this is since I only stayed in for 6 years anyways. So at the time, I mean, I really was thinking that I was going to be in the military and do that as a career. So taking that advice seemed to make sense.
And then you get 5 years in and you're like,
yeah, like 3 years. Yeah. I was like really trying to give it a fair shot up until then. But yeah, so that was like, so I did 2 years of RTC and then I left, and then pretty much like, I was like, well, I'm like, I don't have any of this RTC stuff to do anymore. And like, I'm just going to really enjoy the college experience. And I, through a mutual friend, got a job as like a door guy at a club. Then moved up to like bar backing, and then
did you ever get any
bartending
fights as the door guy?
A couple like altercations, not even really fights. I mean, I'd already been, I started training when I was like 16 in Muay Thai, 17 with Jiu-Jitsu. I'd had a couple MMA fights before going into college. So, I mean, I was like confident in handling myself, but like I never had to hit someone at the bar. I threw on like 2 rear naked chokes basically on people, like arm drag, rear naked choke type situation.
Have you seen that like early mid 2000s movie Never Back Down?
Yeah. I remember that one.
That just reminded me of that movie.
Yeah.
It's like all the Florida kids like fighting in parking lots and bars and stuff.
There's a lot of, that's Florida.
Yeah.
People love to fight in Florida.
Dude, as a black belt, what's your opinion on street fights?
I would say avoidable for the most part. I just, dude, I had a good friend in college who got in a scuffle with a mutual friend. They were like basically on one of their friends, it had like a birthday party deal. And they had like a party bus or something and it broke down. And then there was some sort of disagreement while they were like waiting on the side of the road, I believe, to like get things fixed. And they get in a little scuffle. He gets hit, he falls, and he knocks his head, and he goes in a coma, and he doesn't make it.
Oh man.
And you just hear, so that was a very real personal, experience for me.
Were they drinking at that time?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and then like your blood's very thin in your brain.
Yeah. So you just hear stuff like that all the time, and then just like the nature of like people these days, and like weapons, and or even just like getting someone, you see the videos of like people getting knocked out and they just like soccer kick them in the face when you're down. So like just like the reward for fighting. But with all that said, like I still think training with the idea in mind of potentially having to use it in a street situation, in a self-defense situation, is valuable, because there are obviously times where you may not have the choice and you may have to get into some sort of physical altercation on the street.
Yeah, it's better to know how to do it, but it's almost all ego unless you're defending yourself out in the street. It's just your ego.
Yeah, picking fights and like actively getting a fight, and that's something I like I said, like I'm thankful that I did start training young, because through my I never got into like a street fight like in college, because, and I think largely that was most of my friends that were fighting a lot were like really insecure guys. And I think that's rooted in a lot of what like people getting into fights and stuff. And it's understandable, because as a young man, you want to prove yourself, and you want to pit yourself against these challenges. And if you don't have safer avenues to do that within, like you're going to just do them out and about. So,
and it's always, you can feel the light bulb clicking in people, like a trial class person in jiu-jitsu, when you're rolling with them, and it might be the first time they've ever grappled with someone, and then you just kind of manhandle them like a child.
Yeah.
And it clicks in their brain like, oh,
dude,
I don't know what I'm doing.
I mean, you hear that so many times from people who like, it's like, yeah, I thought I was capable of this, and I quickly realized like I was not at all. Like everyone should at least, I understand training is not for everyone. Some people just don't like physical touch. It's gross to be sweated on and stuff, but like everyone should just go do a trial class just to know what the potential realities are of the world. I think people are sometimes willfully, sometimes not, or unwillfully ignorant, but ignorant nonetheless. But yeah, so 20, 21, 20, junior, senior year, just like, yeah, got like full into bartending, joined a fraternity, and just like really got into having a good time. And I was still like, I was disciplined, in regard, like compared to my friends. But in hindsight, like I was not really disciplined and not really doing the proper things. And I was not, getting the repetitions, the daily repetitions needed to really build the type of resilience you need to be successful in like an extremely challenging task like BUD/S.
So did you make it into Hell Week, or was it a specific event, or was it just the body fatigue that got you? Or
this was it was the second week of first phase. At this point, we had lost over half the class by that point. Not like what it doesn't really matter. Like, but we had
a little bragging.
There was some like our indoc, at least compared to like people. There's people all within classes around you, and we had like a particularly challenging indoc from what I was told by other people that were around, because our like main instructor was like literally a psychopath, like to the degree where he's like I remember him being like, I hate my fucking bitch wife. And honestly, I don't even really like my kids that much. So I don't want to be home. I'm going to be here. And like, this guy was like a psychopath. But
Like these 18-year-olds are just looking at him like, oh my God.
yeah, it was a fun time. But yeah, I mean, dude, I remember I was under a boat and we'd gotten back and we were doing runs around the beach, and we came back and we were doing like some boat sprints, and I was literally like holding on to the handle, like falling behind, like being dragged. And I remember even like the beginning, some speech, like one of the, I think it was like the lead of the class at the time, like the lead instructor of the class was like talking about, he's like, basically like, he's like, don't be the guy that's like holding your boat crew back. Like, and I'm like literally like, and I'm like, it's like flashing up. I'm like literally like the same exact thing that like the guy's saying. And I was just like, yeah, man. I mean, just straight up mental weakness. And I quit.
So do you think it was like the internal feeling of just not being there? Like, I'm holding these people back. I'm going to ring the bell. Or was it just, I'm done with this?
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely, but like, obviously it sounds more honorable to be like, I couldn't hold my team back any longer. But yeah, it was also because it fucking sucked and I was being a little bitch. I mean, yeah, that is the reality.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I can paint it whatever way. But this is, you know, a dozen years ago at this point. So I can I can be realistic about it now, but for a long time, I mean, I would never have brought this up on a fucking podcast. People are like, I would hide that forever, deep buried. But you know, it's the truth and it's what happens. So
yeah, we're all human. We're all on our life journey for a certain reason.
Yeah. But you know, for a long time, like I felt like, that I was unsuccessful at that because I was a quitter and that's who I am. And then I kind of took that on to a degree. And it took me like a lot of years to work past that. And then like get to the point of being like, dude, the only way that I'm like, there's no, like, I'm 34. I'm not going back in the military. I'm not going back to, but like, there's no way I can, go back to try to like right that wrong in a way, or, you know, be successful where I failed previously. Like the only thing that I can do is, within myself, like know in my heart of hearts that I have become the type of person that would not do that again. Basically, that I can build up the resilience by my own personal day-to-day decisions that I make that nobody else is around for, and basically like have a resume of that internally that I can look back on and be like, I'm proud of the person who I am now, and I'm proud of the decisions I make and the discipline I have, and you know, be that to myself.
At like your early 20s, you're already pass or fail. You get there, you make it through some training days. You're already some of the best that America has to offer in your early 20s, just to get to that point.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and that it's like that never really makes you like feel. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
it
it was
feel
yeah.
bad.
You may have failed, but you failed at this like really, really hard thing. Like that's true, but there's also people that succeeded at this really, really hard thing, and that's who I
Exactly.
you know. I'm not trying to compare myself to the people that are not,
Because I don't want to be like them.
right.
So after Buds, did you go on DES and then try out for EOD, or
Dude,
what was that afterwards?
No, I got very lucky that there were EOD slots available. And that, you know, that actually, it was kind of like, that was another thing that was sort of like this kid had, he'd quit and a couple days later came back, because originally like, they're like, if you like, you're going to go on debt, you're going to go to some shitty job. Like you're not going to get some, because, you know, there was rumors of people in the past, like, you know, okay, you might be able to go EOD or diver or like these other cool jobs. But they were like, that's not the case. You're going to, but then this kid came back and was like, dude, they have EOD slots. Like they're, because he had just quit and they told, like, he knew what was up. And I was like, I remember him, I was like, don't tell me that. Because I was already like weak, you know, and then like that seeped in and it was like, oh, it's not going to be that bad if you quit. But yeah, so fortunately that was the case.
Do you think that's why, for people that don't know, UNDES is like needs of the Navy. Like you don't get a say in what
You're the Navy's bitch.
Exactly.
You have people that literally, guys that have like master's degrees who enlisted to try to be the elite of the elite. And because they attempted to do to be successful at one of the most difficult things in the world, and they failed, their punishment is to now go fucking chip paint off of boats.
And you're gonna do that for 3 years.
The guy beside him has like a 20 ASVAB score and is doing the same thing.
So I always thought that was odd, but do you think they do that to encourage people not to quit?
No, I think they do that because the military is an insanely inept organization that does not know how to allocate its resources properly.
I believe that way more.
Yeah, 100%. No, I mean,
because you have these studs.
Yeah,
right.
It's a serious problem, and like, yeah, dude, I have a friend who has he was a stud dude, like crazy PST scores, and he has a PhD in theoretical particle physics. This is not made up. He went to Buds, he didn't make it, and then he became an aviation electrician, which no shame on that. That's all good, but
like an 18-year-old could become
come on, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just like if you look at this guy's resume and what he had versus what you need to have to get in that position, there's a huge disparity between those things. Fortunately, like once he got there, the people that were like running, they're like, "You what? Like you just did this?" And so he did get like fast tracked into the Blue Angel Squadron ultimately. Oh, nice. So that was good. But still, like just the fact that they took him from that failure and then were like, well, "These are the jobs," and like you're like, "No, dude, look, like use like a small amount of critical thinking and like you have this resource. Like how could it best be allocated? It's definitely not by just going to be an aviation electrician.
It's the worst system.
Yeah, and then plenty of, I mean, like the masters to undes, like that's a real person. I know. I know a lot of other guys with bachelor's degrees that went undes seamen. And then it's like not only are you wasting that resource, but you're creating this like ticking time bomb of just like anger
that guy
and
now
resentment.
His life,
yeah, and the military,
yeah.
So,
and he's going to seep that into everyone around him because he's not going to fit in. Because you send him to go chip paint, and he's going to look at everyone to his right and his left. He's like, dude, I am so much fucking better.
Yeah.
Than this and this place.
Yeah.
And it's just going to get into the whole unit.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame that they do that.
So you got out of Buds. How long before you were in school for EOD?
Let's see. So this was like, it was not too long. It was right around like Thanksgiving time frame. So if I remember correctly, yeah. So yeah, this was like, yeah, right around Thanksgiving. It was a short time. Mm-hmm. I just got super lucky and got pretty much fast tracked into that, and then like went shortly after, maybe just like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then I went back to Great Lakes and was in dive prep. And then I pretty much finished. I got into the class where we would like finish dive prep right before like the Christmas stand down type situation. Finished dive prep and then went home for Christmas break and then reported to Panama City Dive School, like right after Christmas. And then, this is just like a side thing. But showed up to dive school and was like still just like in not a great mental state, but like ready to be like, okay, this is at least like a second chance of sorts. Like it's time to like prove yourself to some degree. And literally like first day dive school's not easy either. So like they, run through like classic, like beat down first day situation. And dude, I'm feeling like shit. And we were starting doing it, and we're in like group run, and like I'm in the back, where I was never a great runner, but like I was like a middle of the pack type runner. And I'm just like, dude, I don't know, like I'm not well, something's going on. And so I was just like basically just like a shit bag, like this whole PT session, just like, and I'm like, this is like my, first day, like this is their first impression, like who they think I am. And so it sucked. And then we get into like a midday, like classroom portion, like we sit down and we're like in the class for like a second, and I like have to like stand up and like run to the bathroom, and before I even get in, like open the door and just projectile vomit all over the floor. And I was like, oh, but I was like, actually, I'm like, this is the best case, because even if I had gone to the bathroom and be like, I just went threw up, they'd be like,
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
But they literally like saw me like projectile vomit. And then so like I went and talked to like the instructor cadre and stuff, and they were like, okay, like you're clearly like, and then showed up the next day, and then like a few days later was good enough, and then started like performing well again. But I was like so grateful that I got to that I at least vomited in front of everyone.
Yeah.
So they knew. I'm like, okay, I actually had a reason that I was being such a dirtbag.
So pro tip for anybody that's struggling in these programs.
Yeah.
Just get sick as shit.
Just throw an Ally McBeal and just stick a couple fingers down your throat and yak all over the place so they can see it. It'll get you out of there.
So you went to dive, and then what's EOD school like? So it's just you're learning how to cut red and blue wires. Like, talk me through that part.
Yeah. So you do, at least for Navy EOD, you do dive school, and then you show up to EOD school at Eglin Air Force Base. And so the EOD school is a joint branch school. So you're there with Air Force, Army, and Marine Corps as well. And then so you go through like, it's about 9 months of like conventional EOD, and it's broken up into sections. So you're doing like, you start, I think they've probably switched some stuff around now at this point, but more or less like you start with like demo, and it's like a series. It's more, I mean, you still have like, you have like PT every day, and like, but like dive school is a lot more physical. And then you go into, I mean, it's similar to Buzz in a sense, where it's a lot of the beat down and stuff in the earlier portions, and then you start to do more skill building stuff as it goes along. And then the elements, you know, you're still having like difficult PT sessions, and sometimes like just out of nowhere they'll throw a day in where they just kick your ass all day and stuff, and it's still challenging, but to a degree you get through the pain for the sake of pain type stuff and start skill building. But yeah, you do like demo, and then like conventional ordnance, and then there's like a tools and methods, all these different like divisions. And it starts with you do demo, and then you go to like tools and methods, different types of ordnance, like ground ordnance, air ordnance. You get into like chem bio stuff, IED stuff, nukes is like the final. So, you know, you do like a small kind of overview of all types of ordnance and ordnance disposal, basically.
So what's the easiest way to make a bomb?
I mean, it's quite simple. You just like, it's just an electrical charge with a spark and some sort of, you know, explosive material essentially. But yeah, and then so like all of the branches go through that together. And then the Navy sticks around, and we go to another area, and we do underwater for like 3 more months. So you do like dive school first, and then the EOD school, and then you kind of combine the two together towards the end.
So when you made it through, was being an EOD tech what you thought it was going to be, or like a year, 2 years in, you're like, okay, this isn't really what I envisioned?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. No, it wasn't what I thought it would be. It was also like just like the nature of the time. It was like as the war on terror was scaling down. So, you know, it's like we're going through, and on all of our instructors are like combat veterans, and they've had like real life experience, and IEDs are like the main concern, what's going on. But as we start to, like my classes start to get to mobile units, like all that actual work is winding down. And I know like it's almost, you know, knowing the realities of those situations and stuff, like it's naive and I guess youthful to like want to be involved in those situations when you know, you see a lot of people that have done those things, and they would, you know, certainly never wish to go back. But yeah, at the time when, you know, that's kind of what
that's all you want to do is go to war if you haven't been to war. I
mean, realistically, I think most young men to some degree are just want to see how they will react to a situation like that. Yeah. Again, like I recognize that as youthful and naive, but that was the reality of the situation. So, and it was kind of just like luck of like with EOD, like there's so many mission secs. So EOD gets deployed, like EOD techs go on, every aircraft carrier that goes out has a Navy EOD team there, basically just standing by for the most part. If rockets like fall off, you know, missiles fall off the planes and onto the flight deck, they're there to like handle that situation. Sometimes they'll get flown off and do little mission stuff here and there. EOD like does like what, you know, the mission sec I was telling you about earlier that we did was the, you know, the diving stuff and like clearing the beach zones. EOD deploys, gets attached to SEAL teams, gets attached to Army Special Forces team, gets attached to all these different, because Navy EOD is the only considered special operations,
Right.
EOD of all the branches. So Navy EOD goes out with all these different special ops groups. And so like the job you can do varies widely. So because, you know, even though the war on terror is winding down, there's still specialized teams going out and doing special missions. So still some guys are getting those missions, and then it's like just needs of the Navy, like depending on like the time that you get through and the time you show up to the mobile unit and the timing of the missions that pop kind of just depend on, especially as a new guy when you've had no chance to like, you know, I think as you progress and if you've proven yourself to be like a valuable asset and like good at your job, you know, then maybe then they're picking and choosing a little bit. But as a new guy, there's really no way to show, you know, what you've done, or so they're just kind of like luck of the draw, like doing what you're doing. So and then of course, like in the military in general, as real shit winds down, there becomes more time for
Bullshit.
bureaucracy and rules and regulations and all that stuff. So it's just like with the nature of that and being exposed to, you know, directly to all the people, all of our instructors that were really doing real shit, their stories, how things were, and then getting there and there's being like a strong disparity between those. I was like, yeah, this is not only not what I thought it was, but it wasn't what you guys told me it was either. And not that wasn't their fault. There's just like the way things were progressing.
What year did you get out?
So I got out in 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, and then because like again, needs of the Navy and timing and shuffling, like I got after that first deployment, I got put on a second platoon that was actually doing the same exact mission. And I was like, well, they're like, look, like you can either do this or there's no. I was like, well, okay, let's just do it again. I'd rather get another deployment, like do something. And then like 5 months into that workup, that whole mission set got erased. And so they disbanded our whole, and it was a great platoon. It was a lot of my friends. It was fun. And then it was like, all right, dude, I had like 10 months left in the military at that point. So they just stuck me in R&D. I got to, you know, and then EOD goes and we do stuff with Secret Service as well, like as bomb techs. So I got to do a couple of cool, I got to go to DC for a month and do the White House gig there.
What'd you do out there in the White House?
So that's just like, you're basically, you go and like you're doing like shifts like at the White House, and then you're kind of
just like on call.
Yeah, your running duties are like when they shut down like the tours, you just go and like sweep the area and make sure nobody like planted any explosives, that kind of stuff.
So how do you sweep, other than like a visual sweep? How do you sweep for like...
Nailed it.
That's it?
You go. Anything under here? Anything
Is there a bomb in here?
I mean, really, like you don't need an EOD tech to do it, but the idea is if there were something that, you know, we would know what to do. Yeah, you do that, and then you like check equipment and stuff as people are coming in, and then if there is an issue, like if there is something, you respond. And there was like a VBIT, like a vehicle borne ID, like on my second to last shift when I was
at
there.
the White House.
Yeah.
So was it an actual VBID or was it just?
So it wound up not being. But so like the thing about that situation is it is until it's not. So I mean it was a real, and what I was on, I wound up getting there. You're in a pair of two. And again, like I was at this point so over the Navy. Like I was just like, you know, these are things in hindsight I would have obviously done differently. But like I just didn't, at that point I was like, I'm not trying to be the best EOD tech I can be. I don't really care about improving at this at all. My eyes were so onto the horizon that like I just didn't care. When in reality I should have tried to do the best I could at that job just for the sake of doing something well. Like it benefits you in other areas, right? Stuff you know now that when you're younger, when I was younger.
And the White House is a place to party. You can do coke in the White House apparently now.
These days. I mean, actually, not only say these, it's probably always been that way. But
can you imagine the White House with Bill Clinton just throwing parties with hookers in the White House?
Yeah.
Maybe he did that. Maybe.
I don't know. I'm sure there's been a lot of wild shit going on in there. But yeah, and so I was like, I got shifted to the head, like the lead on that, because there was supposed to be like a person that was far higher ranking than me that I was under, and then they had to drop out last minute, so they just plugged a guy in that was like a year younger or junior to me. So I became the lead. So then I'm sitting there watching like, I think it was Florida State Alabama football game at like 10:30 at night, and we get a call, and it was like whatever the fucking code is, like Screaming Eagle, we got a 7.6. I'm like, I go, is this real? And they're like, yeah, this is real. So I'm like, fuck, dude. So we ran it and went out there, and it was like this crazy dude. Like you could have taken this guy out and put him as his role as like a guy that rolls up to the White House and says he's going to blow it up. He has a bomb in his car, and like put him in a movie, and he would have fit just like the way he looked. Like he looked insane.
It's just a vehicle parked outside.
So he rolled up to the gate and basically was like, he's like, whatever he said. He's like, I have a bomb. I'm gonna blow up kill the president, or whatever he said. And so they can meet, like the guy like stops him, like pulls him, but then the car's there, and the guy we found all this out later. Like he had driven from Florida across the country, like not stop, and his car. It was a like technical nightmare as far as like actually like searching for an explosive, because his car was like filled with trash. Just like McDonald's wrappers and cups and like
so you don't know what's hiding under what.
Yeah. So I mean, it was like I was like, dude, this sucks. And you know, the military, like everything, super like super safe. Mm-hmm. So our our procedures like are extremely safe, like overly cautious. So fortunately, as we're doing the thing, and then the DC police is able to come and take over the scene. So where we have to do everything super remote procedures first. As far as even like you wouldn't even be allowed to, like if I were to have gone up to that vehicle, physically opened the door, like I would have been fucked by the head shit, like totally against protocol. We would have been getting out the robot, setting everything up, going, like doing every move like via remote means. Mm-hmm. And then the DC police, they're like, oh, we don't give a shit about that or our personal safety. So they just rolled up, like guy starts like opening shit. It doesn't matter at all. So fortunately, because what would have been a fucking 8-hour procedure for us, they just cruised through.
Dude, so how accurate is the Hurt Locker movie?
I mean, again, like I didn't go to combat, so I don't, exactly know. I mean, I do know there's some ridiculous shit in there where he like pulls up like a bunch of mortars like by the deck cord, kind of stuff like that. Obviously it's Hollywood to a degree. Yeah.
So you do the stint at the White House, and as you're getting out, did you know what you wanted to do when you were getting out, or were you like, shit, what's next?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, it was, I didn't know, but it was also a fairly easy transition because of the GI Bill. Knowing that I could basically buy some time, getting paid to go get my master's was like, okay. So I kind of like started to dabble in a little bit of business stuff at that point. Just like I had like my first product that I'd started to sell online through Amazon.
What was the product?
It was actually like a surf poncho, like a changing towel. Oh. You know, like those like ponchos you put over and like change.
So like right away you're like, dude, I do not want to work in corporate or like
that was still like the same exact ideas that I'd had getting out of high school. The reasons why I joined, or largely why I joined the military, I definitely still, if anything, that had gotten like ingrained and hardened in me as far as like being in the military. That was another aspect that definitely drove me away from the military, was like having so many people with the power to tell me what to do. I really resented that. I hated that. I just craved independence and freedom. And it started to become pretty clear that some form of entrepreneurship was probably the most realistic way to achieve that. So I kind of gotten interested. And again, by that point, I also started to understand like that business was not just suit and tie showing up to a corporate office. Like, oh, like all these fucking cool, like surf brands and stuff that I'm into. And like, somebody started those and was doing that. And then like started just looking at products and things and like the ideas of like, oh, like everything we have. I mean, Liquid Death, sick fucking brand, like Starbucks, coffee, like all these things, this sunglass company, someone just like started that. And then now it grew to what it was. So that just like the idea that was a possibility.
So where did the idea of Flow, because I think it came while you were in college finishing your MBA. Where did the idea for Flowhold come from? Like the name, the idea, all of it.
So I wind up going to business school, and also with that, I mean, it wasn't like I was like, I'm going to create a company like that. Even still wasn't. It was just like, okay, is looking at graduate degrees, like the MBA is very broad. So like almost every other graduate degree, like you're pigeonholing into a pretty small lane of potential job opportunities afterwards. Like if you get a master's degree in psychology, like you're going to be like a therapist of some sort, right? Business, like
we're a real estate agent.
yeah. That's always an option for the real estate. Like,
it's like most real estate agents are a psychology bachelor degrees.
Yeah. But yeah, so I still wasn't even like so certain, like, oh, for sure going to be an entrepreneur. But it was like, okay, I could also, maybe I'll concede and be like, get into like marketing or something. It was like, because I just wasn't confident that I could go and start a business. So that was not, I'm not saying like, I was like, I went to business school knowing I was going to found a business and be a successful entrepreneur. Like that definitely was not the case still. But it was like, okay, at least I can go get this master's degree and there's going to be a lot of potential opportunities afterwards. And I can use that 2 years while I'm getting this degree to sort of like test some stuff out and figure some stuff out, which wound up being the case. It was great for that.
So how'd you come up with the name Flowhold?
So Flowhold was, I did not even, it didn't even seem like a possibility. I was like so small minded that I wasn't even like, I'm going to start a jiu-jitsu brand. I was like, okay, what's something within the jiu-jitsu space that's like untapped that I can like super like niche down? And I started business school and I was like starting to have to like wear business casual and stuff. And this was 2018 when every fucking wedding, every group of groomsmen would like lift up their legs and be like, we have fun socks on. Like we may be dressed formally, but we look at our personality via our ankles. So I was like, these fun socks are like very popular. I'm like, I'm just going to make some kind of like jiu-jitsu themed socks. And that was like what Flowhold started as. And it was very much just like, okay, this is an easy, small investment to make like a small amount of product. And then I'll create like a brand and I'll do a couple t-shirts and stuff and just like see how this goes. And so like that was Flowhold. And then originally like I was like, oh, socks, like foot. And then I was thinking toehold. And then I'm like researching and stuff. And now, which is like crazy, this like basically softcore porn company that also happens to sell really ugly flip flops.
They have their marketing down locked in.
Yeah, they do. That already exists. I didn't even know until I started like researching. I mean, because at that time, I think they weren't nearly as big as they are now. So I was like, okay, that exists. So then I was just kind of like thinking of other names and stuff, but I had toehold in mind. I was like, oh, I kind of combined like the flow and the whole, and then it sort of all like developed and then it like it was just one of those things where like I sort of stumbled on this thing, but then it like sort of made sense. And then I was like, oh, like I like the idea of like the really awesome part of there's so many great benefits of jiu-jitsu. It's incredible. Yeah. But part of the thing that I think draws a lot of people in is when they do it in that feeling of just being so present and so in the moment. And being in that flow state, like while you're in jiu-jitsu. And that's something kind of people confuse because flow in jiu-jitsu also is like, oh, flow roll will go easy, but it doesn't have anything to do with flow rolling. It's about the state, the flow state. And I was like, I like that, like the way that's sort of like holding on to that like flow, like being in the moment and like holding on to that. So that's where it kind of like, it started as sort of like me just like fumbling, trying to find a name. And then it became something that actually like meant something to me. So then when I like kind of realized that significance, I was like, okay, this is it. It's perfect.
Wow, and I didn't know that. So it started just small, just socks.
Super small. Yeah, super small. Super niche down. And go figure, the socks weren't a smash hit. Like they did fine. I had some friends that were really nice and supported and whatever. But I had one of my best friends, Alban, is a graphic designer. And I kind of hit him with like the idea of more like what I want to do. Like it was like the like what the brand, the main icon like still is like with the sock. That's why that sock is on the but it works out still. I mean, it's kind of like pays homage a little bit to how it started, but also I think it just as a design looks cool. Like it looks cooler than just cool. Like some toesies hanging out. Like guys' toes are fucking weird. If you're into that, it's all good. But generally not great for a like a brand icon.
Dude, that could be a way you spin off marketing. I mean, you have toe holds, hot chicks. You could just be feet, dude's feet.
Hot dude's feet.
Hot dude's feet.
Yeah,
dude.
that's a good idea. Actually, you should head that up. Hot dudes out there, if you got some foot pics, send them to Corey, and
I'll
he's
take
going
them
to
all.
review them, and then he's going to send the best ones to me. Do not send them to me, send them to Corey.
I'm sure I could find a website to sell your feet pics on and make money.
Yeah. If there's any way to make some cash, it's foot pics for sure.
Oh yeah. Man.
But yeah, dude. And then, Alban just like killed it on the design and, made some t-shirts and stuff along with it. And like people like loved the t-shirts. And so that kind of gave me a little confidence to be like, okay, like maybe I could take this brand and move into something more. And because I had some experience doing the poncho stuff on Amazon, at the time, things have changed a lot since then, but at the time, like there was really not, there was just kind of like utilitarian, like training shorts and rash guards and stuff on Amazon. I was like, okay, I can make like an Amazon price point that just like looks better than what is currently offered. And then I kind of made some products like that, like kind of for Amazon. And
with these products, like the rash guards, the hats, all these things, are you, because I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you making these like at home or at a local warehouse, or do you pay someone and then they make the actual product? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. It's all manufacturing. I mean, so it's like, it starts with finding like a manufacturer, basically. Like, so there's thousands of manufacturers. So essentially like you're just sourcing all these, you're kind of making like what's officially called like a tech pack, but more or less like you're putting together a way to convey your idea on a piece of paper or on a digital sheet, whatever you're emailing out. You're like, hey, I want to get these samples made up. And then basically you just like ideally hit out, like get a wide spread of manufacturers and get all these different like samples, like their version of your idea. So like what you're sending the same digital idea, the tech pack, out to all these different people, and you're like, okay, how does their physical representation of what my idea, how does that get conveyed, and they make it. And then you can kind of niche down, and then based off of like obviously quality, price point, communication, and like it's kind of almost like a courtship of sorts of like finding your like manufacturing partner.
And so how did you did you just Google manufacturers?
So Alibaba is like the main, it's almost like, people say it's like Amazon, but it's really just it's where all the manufacturers are located. And so you can kind of like search almost any product, and then you'll find like tons of manufacturers for that product.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I always wonder, because people like, whether it's keys or shirts, some people have to do pre-orders, so you have to like get the money up front and then pay certain companies to do the drop.
Yeah, and I mean there's there's more ways out, and I've since gone other routes as well, but Alibaba is like the main thing. But yeah, I mean like finding, like it took a lot of trial and error to like finally find like a really good source that works well and like makes a quality product, and like conveying your ideas also, like being able to.
I just want dude's feet all over this t-shirt.
yeah. But like having that come out to ultimately be like what your vision of the final product is. It's like, it's almost finding someone that like when you're dating and you're like, oh, this conversation is just like not clicking. It's like what I'm telling you, like you're not kind of conveying. So like finding that within a manufacturer is important for sure.
So going back to that, when you got out of the military and you started using the GI Bill, did you already know what you wanted to do when you got out? Or was there a point whenever you got out of the military, you're like, what do I do with my life? Like, who am I? Or did you already kind of know who Noah was? Did you already know your identity when you got out of the military?
No, not at all. No. That was dude. I mean, I was still like struggling through like those initial like failures and just not feeling like I had accomplished what I had wanted to. Looking back on my thought patterns and like my self-belief and all this, like, no, like not at all. I was still like really just confused and uncertain. And dude, I honestly, up until probably about 2-3 years ago, I would say I was pretty confused on who I was and what I wanted to do, and the type of impact I wanted to leave, all that type of stuff. That stuff's kind of started clicking more recently.
What do you think helped figure that out?
I think that putting some serious intention behind those thoughts and actually getting quiet and focusing on searching for some answers. I think that definitely having children helped me a lot as far as just providing, well, in so many ways, but like providing some perspective and some motivation. Realistically, I think kind of coming to a belief in God and pursuing a relationship with God and allowing that to enter into my life into a way, I think helped a lot.
Nice. So your father was a pastor. Were you religious throughout college, military, or did you just recently?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the church, always quite religious. It's some of these words are like, they may mean certain things to other people. My parents are like, are and have always been like, very, loving and devoted followers of Jesus Christ and his message. I would say. So, in my mind, like there are kind of Christians and people that go to church and that sort of thing. And then there are, I think, people that really pursue a relationship with Jesus and follow his example in a sense. And I put my parents in that category. And mind you, I'm not in either of those categories entirely. I think there's some crossover with myself, but so, I grew up in the church and I always saw my parents, and my parents have always been what I would say, if you just look at, even outside, if you're not a Christian, but if you just took the general teachings of Jesus, like the Jefferson Bible, right? Like Thomas Jefferson basically like wasn't like necessarily a Christian, but he took down and like just basically like took out like the words of Christ and kind of created his own little Bible. So if you were to take it, with a grain of salt and like from that sort of perspective, like my parents are those types of people. Growing up in the church, and I saw a lot of examples of people that were not like that were wanted to appear to do the right things, and they went to church and they, put on this presence of being
everybody's
godly
talking shit about what other people are wearing. And...
Yeah. I mean, like the class, I think like anyone that grew up the church in the church and then wound up resenting it, like those exact people. I saw plenty of examples of that. But my parents definitely weren't. So I would say like my parents are like the best versions of Christians, that you could find. So I always had that as an example to me. But I had plenty of examples of the other way as well. So I grew up in that, and I even think as a kid, like middle school was by the time you start to be of the age to really start to be able to think about these things. As a kid, you're just like, yeah, Jesus, God, whatever.
Yeah, and you go to church every Sunday, and you're like, all right.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, way more normal, because we're both from Georgia. Way more normal in the Southeast.
Totally.
Compared to you tell someone out here, that's what you do. You just go to church when you're
right. That's a good point. But yeah, so from the age where I could start to sort of even critically think about these things, I definitely started to stray a little bit from the conventional beliefs of my family, I would say, and then went through different phases of even being like, I'm an atheist, whatever, or just like not caring or into it, and then like giving it more of a shot, pulling back away.
So about 2 years ago, what pulled you?
Well, yeah. So then like, I would say when I was in the military, so let's say like my mid 20s, I'm sort of just, agnostic to a degree. I'm not really sure, not really even giving it much thought. But then, I got to go through a lot from the military, went through, Southeast Asia and traveled all like to a bunch of different countries through there. And just being interested, like every time just enjoying travel, enjoying other cultures, like trying to make the most of being abroad. I would always go to like Buddhist temples and Hindu temples and go and just because, I mean, the architecture is amazing, these beautiful places and stuff. But then I started seeing all these people. I'm like in there and like meditating and praying, and then just sort of like it sort of struck me of like, dude, these people they have a relationship with their God that's as real as the relationship my parents have with theirs. And I venture to believe that if this guy was born in Atlanta, Georgia, he'd probably be a Christian. And maybe if some of my friends and family that grew up Christians, if they were born over here, they might be in this temple. So that kind of idea started to like seep in around that time through travel and being exposed to other cultures. And then around that time was when I kind of maybe started thinking about it a little bit more. And then, honestly, like a couple of like significant psychedelic experiences sort of opened my mind more so to the possibility of God and a higher power. And that was
mushrooms or?
Yeah, mushrooms. And that's the first time that I really felt like a real, like significant connection to God.
So how was the first experience with mushrooms? Because I'm a big supporter of them.
Yeah.
Huge impact in my life. But so your first time?
It was just like, it was with a buddy from the military, another EOD tech, one of my really good friends. And we were just like at his house, and we were just, putting on some music, chilling at home on the couch. And it was perfect. I never like dabbled like partying, trying to like do that stuff. So it was like, I feel like I had a good initial encounter. Cause at that point, like it had started to seep into the culture to a degree. I heard people on podcasts. So I had enough information about it to know like probably the better ways to go about it. Yeah. Like as far as like having intention and,
and the old school programming of it's going to rot your brain maybe isn't true.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, dude, it just was like, I mean, I literally felt the presence of God. I mean, it sounds like if you haven't had those, I know you understand, but people that haven't had those experiences may not understand it.
So what do you mean by when you felt the presence of God?
Man, it's, it's like, it's a feeling. It's not like, it's not some guy with a white beard on the throne saying, hello, I'm God. It's just, I mean, I like felt this force of eternal life and love that I was a part of and was in me and I was in it and like all that. And so coming away from that, I'm just being like, wow, like that felt more real than this, like that felt real.
Yeah.
This, I'm not like disassociative. This is all real, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like the essence, it felt more significant than most of the other things. Outside of it, it felt as significant as when you feel a lot, when you are, nowadays when I'm like spinning my son around in the yard and I look into his eyes and he's just like laughing and we're just like connecting and like those types of moments that we have, like where you're like, I'm alive, like this is real, this is significant. Like it was that type of feeling. Those moments that are like not happening all the time on your normal day to day of I'm sitting in traffic, I'm going to some job, I'm sitting at a desk, I'm typing away on a computer, I'm scrolling through my phone. Like those are not those moments, So I felt that, and it like felt significant. And then kind of like moving from that point was when I started to shift of like, okay, I definitely believe that I'm still not like would say I believe in God. There is a God, there is a higher power.
But at this point, you're like, there's something else.
At this point, I'm like, I'm very open to the idea, and I'm leaning, maybe even not leaning at this point, but like, I'm like, that is as much of a possibility as saying there isn't. Like, I'm like, you really can't just have such a strong distinct. I'm not confident in saying there is no God like I used to be able to. I'm as confident as basically what I would say was, I'm thinking there probably is a higher power. If you could show me some evidence that would suggest otherwise, I'm open to hearing it. So I was kind of in this in between of like, there is, I'm leaning towards this, but like sort of got to the point where I was like, okay, when I'm sort of in the mindset of believing it's more likely there's a higher power than not, it seems like my life and my thoughts are steering more in a positive direction and that are ultimately giving me tangible benefits in my life. So my thought process was like, well,
it's almost like we were meant to honor God.
It's almost like that. So I was like, well, if it really doesn't matter to me one way or the other, but if I elect to allow myself to believe in this path that gives me tangible benefits that are undeniable, then why would I not just allow myself to be in that camp, to like lean into it in a way? And that's sort of, so I mean, I think, because at the time, you know, I was like, wanted to be super rational. That was my mind of like rationality of like, okay, this is proven, this is, you know, science and experiments and this and data. And I still think that stuff's incredibly important. But I also think that there's so much that type of stuff cannot explain. There's things we know now that 100 years ago would have been insane to believe, but science and data and stuff is, so it's like relying on science and technology and data to like be your belief system is you're kind of just forcing yourself to be behind, because in 100 years from now, there's going to be a lot of stuff that we can't prove now that science will catch up to, right? So in that type of realm of things, like, you've got to just allow yourself to, you know, have some faith. So when I started to like lean into it and like make a rational decision, well, if I don't believe, then I don't feel as good. And like my mood shifts to a more negative side and I don't have these benefits. And if I do allow myself to believe it's the other way, then rationally, I'm going to allow myself to lean into it and believe. And then once I allowed that to just lean a little, I fell in.
Have you been a part of any 12-step programs at all ever? So that's a big thing that 12-step programs talk about, that if you don't have this belief in God or your higher power, but if you don't put that outside of yourself into this being and have that faith, you make yourself your own higher power. So you're your God, or sex is your God, or booze is or drugs is your God. And so that's like a lot of people living as an atheist, or if they don't have this faith, they're just living their life as, well, it doesn't get any better than me.
Yeah.
There is no higher power. There is no God. I'm the God.
Yeah.
And then you're miserable because we're all imperfect people.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that was you know, and all this stuff, so, you know, it's hard to pull apart the whole.
Yeah.
But this all happened around the time my wife got pregnant, and then my son was born. And then naturally, you know, when you start to have children, it really shakes things up and puts a lot of things in perspective. And
what did she think about the psychedelic experience you had?
Oh, my wife's so sick. She's like, she's
like, it's about time.
No, she's not into it. She's never, you know, she's never gone down those roads either. But my wife is like so level-headed, even keel, happy-go-lucky, go with the flow. Like, and then like from the jump of our relationship, she's known just how fucking weird and bizarre I am and my tendencies and, you know, that I can be, but she just knows me so well, that I don't know if there's much that I can do that would like surprise her.
Have you ever talked to her about trying it?
Yeah. And like, she's like open, but not, I don't know. She doesn't really feel like something that like she needs, you know? And I think for most people it could be quite beneficial, but like, yeah, like she's not confused at all.
Yeah.
And she's just like content, and it's awesome. But I'm so not that way, you know? So I don't necessarily think the same medicine is right for every person to a degree.
Did you,
but yeah.
Whenever you were getting out, did you have anybody that you knew in the service that died while they were in, or since they got out to suicide or anything like that?
Not a service member to suicide. No.
Any buddies or anything?
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about it?
It's pretty recent, actually. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And just because of details with other people, I don't know. I just don't want to say anything that I really don't have a problem with talking about it at all.
Yeah.
Just for the privacy of other people, because it's pretty recent. I just don't
How did it, you don't have to name anybody, how did it impact you? How was it?
I mean, it was shocking. It was I mean, after like the initial grief and sort of like, you know, I think we learned something from every tragedy. But yeah, it just immediately like made me think about like the classic saying of or like trope of being like you don't know the battles that people are fighting. And even when with someone like you're pretty close to, like that they are capable of that or going through the things that you may not know, and even knowing that people that are like significantly closer to them than I was, like had no idea. It just like makes you think like, damn, like just be nicer to everyone because you have no fucking clue like what is going on. And yeah, man. And dude, I get it. Like I understand there. I've been very unhappy at points in my life too. So I know how slippery those dark thoughts can be. But yeah, I just think that approaching interactions with people of just trying to be a little more gracious in every step is a good default to try to have. Not and like not on my soapbox or preaching, because I'm certainly don't do that all the time at all. But something that I've been thinking about and trying to get better at. Yeah.
Did you ever get near any of those ideas in those low points, or in the military, out of the military?
No, I mean, not to the degree of actionable steps or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is something that, yeah, I'll share this. Like I was definitely not like suicidal. I was apathetic towards life. I was to a point where I probably would not, I would tell if something had happened, like, so be it. Like the idea of if I could just take the long nap, you know, if I went to sleep and just like didn't wake up, like that would maybe be convenient. But like, dude, this is bizarre and probably not to you, but if again, back to kind of the psychedelic thing, like I had, and you know, I've only had like a handful of, you know, of, you know, I'll take some microdose a little bit, like to the degree of, if you know all this too, but I mean, essentially what the effect of like a couple of beers would do to you, or a strong cup of coffee, like that degree of like effect on how you feel. But as far as like deeper trips, like probably a half dozen spread over 7 years, you know? But yeah, dude, I had a mushroom trip that I, at the point, was like in more of a depression. And like, it wasn't that I was ever suicidal, but it was that the thought that it could potentially, again, talking about slippery, you know, and knowing just like how things can shift from one day to the next, and how, just you can go down, you know, how easy it is to like continue to slip. And just being like worried that, knowing how bad I could feel, that potentially there was a road where that could get significantly worse. And I like felt like, not, you know, I was told in a sense, but more of like a feeling, that it was like, you don't have to have that fear anymore. Like you don't have to have the fear that you'll ever take your own life. And when I tell you, like, it was a feeling, like it was such a it was like, it was a weight lifted off my shoulders, literally. I mean, and again, not even being to the point of like ever taking any sort of actionable steps towards taking my own life. But just something about having that, like that cloud, like hovering over that, potentially like it could get to that point.
Yeah.
And like like the feeling of like being like, I don't know, like when you're a kid And like if like something's going, like it's like scary or something, and like I'm talking about like a little kid, like your 5-year-old or whatever, and it's scary, and your friend like tells you like you don't need to be scared. You're like, okay, like I was told that, but you're like, but you just told me that, like I still fear. Versus like when you're a kid and like you hear something and like your dad's there,
Yeah.
and he's like, you don't have to be afraid. Like I'm here, and then you're like, you feel that I don't have to be afraid, and I can believe that. You know, like I feel it. It was like that type of feeling, and yeah, dude. I mean, it was like, oh wait.
Were you alone when you were on this trip?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it was like, just kind of started like tears of joy, like crying, you know, just like a relief. Just knowing that. And then, you know, and that is kind of like starting to get to the like starting to take in pain and struggle and understanding significance in that and the reason why it might exist on this plane and in this earth, and what it means and why things can be so hard sometimes. And that there might be just things that we don't understand and maybe aren't meant to understand fully. So
I feel like there's a lot of men that feel that way.
yeah, totally.
Why do you think? Why do you think that's so prevalent in men? Maybe it's even more so nowadays, of this feeling of just apathy or hopelessness.
I think because culturally we place value and significance on the wrong things. I think the world is, I mean, I do think that we, you know, again, I believe in God. I do think I think there's a higher power and that we were created, but I also think that I believe in, you know, evolution, that we were, you know, God put that spark there, and then that we were part of a plan that evolved. But even if you just look at, you know, as human beings, what our lives were like, smaller groups, significant relationships, the tasks were simple. There was little comparison. We were together. We were with our family. We were, you know, getting our own food, like, you know, versus now everything's just so artificial and so foreign to what we've evolved to do. So like these tasks, like the cheap, everything being cheap and easy. And I don't mean cheap and like money, like expense, but like cheap is accessible. Like you can just go to the grocery store and get your frozen meal, and you put on your Netflix and
unless you're in martial arts or some kind of thing like that, a lot of men don't have this community or this tribe, and if they do, it's drinking buddies.
Yeah,
and they never talk about anything past surface level.
Yeah, and again, and with all that too, like, and they don't have like significant struggle. The struggles are artificial and forced upon them, and it's sometimes too big to overtake, you know, but like having these like micro struggles within like a contained environment like jiu-jitsu, and you know, that's good for you, that's good for your body, it's good for your soul, all that type of stuff. I mean, you know, there's a lot that goes into it all, but relationships, friendships, purpose, meaning, connection to higher, all that stuff.
If a guy was, or a girl, but say if a guy was on the fence about trying psychedelics, but he's in a place where he just doesn't know what he's doing with his life, just kind of lost, what would you say to that guy?
Man, I really think, you know, I think now as it's evolving, I don't think it's too challenging to find like therapists that are, at least around here. I don't know for sure in San Diego, there are people, and I think as far as like bang for your buck, and I've done it with just buddies, and but again, I had that information and knowledge, and like was sort of aware of the proper way to go about it. You know, I do think these are like, they're powerful tools. You know, like people talk, you know, like you say, like the fire that will burn your house down is going to also cook your food and keep you warm. So like it would definitely be an individual case by case basis as far as like what I would recommend to a person. But I would say if you even feel like slightly like you could be mentally unstable or on the edge that like seeking out a professional, like they're professional, but it's kind of underground, but like you can navigate the right resources and find those people. It's something that I really want to do. And I've been connected with a couple people, and something I think I will do down the road. Again, I mean, the last few years I've been pretty content in my mental state and like don't feel as much like I feel like I learned for the most part what I needed to learn from that.
Yeah. And there's so many studies right now too, like Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Yale, they all did studies on psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yeah.
And showing that treatment resistant depression, just one session with MDMA or psilocybin, the positive effects it can have and get you off of SSRIs, all this medication. The science is there.
Yeah.
And there's so many, especially in the veteran community, the first responder community. I mean, you go on any podcast nowadays and people are talking about it, that it had such a great impact on their life.
Yeah.
But yeah, after I got my brain injury, I was maybe a year or two out of recovery or so, and I'd gotten into cycling, and I was in that kind of apathy place of waking up every day and don't really care. And I remember I was cycling, and that feeling, the easiest way I could convey that to somebody when I look back on it was I would cycle through town up in Oceanside. And I just wouldn't look at stop signs. I wouldn't look at the intersection. I'm just like, I'm driving through it.
Yep.
And you don't care. You don't look through the intersection. And that was that point of like, you know what? I'm not doing anything, but I don't care.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And same thing. Some friends of mine who were retired SEALs and then their spouses, I connected with them and then went out to East San Diego. And we did like a whole event and ceremony with mushrooms and peyote, and like after that everybody's just crying their eyes out and just bawling. And then that started to kind of put that crack in my wall of like figuring it out, you know.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like these things are from the earth. They're from, in my belief, they're put there for us, like to connect.
Yeah.
It's all, you know what I mean, from the earth back to the earth through a higher power in between. I believe that, you know. I think that the earth provides, you know, it's some hippie bullshit, but I do believe that to be true.
You know, it's so funny, like the programming works, all the marketing, all the propaganda. Because when I was a kid, I used to look at people that like smoked weed or mushrooms. I'm like, oh, you guys are just rotting your brain, you fucking hippies. And like when I was young in Georgia, and now I'm like, dude, everybody should do mushrooms.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's an old song at this point, but you know, you look at these substances that are encouraged through our culture, and they are the ones that allocate for the machine to continue to run. So it's like you go to the 9 to 5 you hate, and you come home and you self-medicate with alcohol, and you get up and you blast some caffeine to get you to be productive again, and that cycle continues. And then the substances, the drugs, which alcohol and caffeine, it's all drugs. They're things that affect your body. You know, the ones that aren't as conducive to that type of system are the ones that are demonized.
Do you know the company? I think it's Philip Myers, the company that owns Marlboro, like the cigarette company.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this until a few months ago. I was looking into it. So the Philip Morris, I think they own Marlboro and a couple other cigarette brands. It's like maybe in the 80s or the 90s, they bought Nabisco, they bought Hasbro, they bought like 6 or 7 different food companies, like giant conglomerates.
Yeah.
And so now tobacco companies are making all of the snack foods like Pringles, Oreos, all of that. Those companies, they're all individual brands, but they're all owned by the tobacco industry.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the mega corps and the people that own everything and the connections between, you know, the military contractors, the pharmaceuticals, the big ag, the food, and then, you know, it's just follow the money. It's a very simple picture. You know, it's really easy to see. And yeah, and the food, I mean, talk about, again, a piece of it, but you know, people being depressed and not lively and not living to their full potential. I mean, we're being poisoned all the time. And that was stuff that I started to wake up to when I had kids, and like just being like, oh, okay, like, you know, it's fine for me, but like, you know, I got to be more mindful of what this sweet little being gets put into their body. Yeah. And I started reading these, like, okay, red 40, fucking blue, you know, and then you start realizing, like, oh, like all these all these European countries have, you know, these recipes are different, all the ingredients are different, but they're allowed to sell it in the US, and then you look at who owns it and then who's donated to who and where the the money paints the picture.
Have you seen the video of Congress holding up Fruit Loops from Canada and America?
I haven't seen that, no.
Yeah, so it's on, I saw it the other day, and Fruit Loops that we have in America are outlawed in Canada because of all the dyes and all the coloring. And so I think this was in Congress, either here or in Canada. But they hold up a bag of Fruit Loops from Canada, and it's just beige, just looks like cereal. And then they pull out a bag from America, and it's just rainbow colors. And it's like, this is illegal in Canada because it's poison. But America, it's totally fair game.
Yeah. And dude, it sucks too, because you'll have, you know, like I just saw this this brand that we get a lot is Siete. They make like churro, these like healthy chips and stuff like that, and like they just sold to Nabisco or some shit, and like, you know, it's like, so like all these small brands start up and they have the same idea, like, okay, we're gonna make a healthy version, or like even beyond the food, you look at like the cosmetics and the things. I was just looking at, because like I got some bad reactions from like deodorants. Yeah. And I started looking at deodorants and
like the red rash in your armpit.
Yeah. So like the aluminum and all the chemicals and everything like that's in like your typical Old Spice and Degree, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get these more like natural, like smaller brands. And then so went to like Native or Schmidt's, these other couple, and then like you realize a couple, like, oh, they're like, oh, they're in Target now, like that's cool, it's accessible. But then you realize they're in Target because they sold to Unilever or they sold to Johnson & Johnson, and then now the formula's changed. And you know, there's people that there's conspiracy theories around it. They're like, you know, you trying to taint the public, make us more docile, make us unhealthy, so then we have to spend more money. You know, that I don't know to a degree, or if that's just like a byproduct of, but like the fact of the matter is it's cheaper to use these like chemicals and stuff than to make a quality product. So like that's what it is, right? There could be something more grand at play. Like, I don't know. I haven't looked into it all that much, but like regardless, we know that the stuff we're absorbing through our skin, which is our biggest organ in our body, absorbs everything through the stuff that we're consuming. Like it is extremely difficult to avoid that stuff, especially if you're and it's costly, especially if you're poor. You're not putting healthy stuff in your body. I mean,
I was looking at, I went to the CVS a while back, and I was looking for something, but I checked out the kids Tylenol, age like 3 to 11. And I was like, I wonder. And I turned it to the side, red number 40, high fructose corn syrup, like 4 other ingredients. I'm like, why the fuck are you putting high fructose corn syrup in Tylenol?
Why? Yeah.
For kids.
Yeah. Why you need to dye this red? Like, what does it even matter? There's this really good guy online. His thing is, I forget his actual name, but Cancel This Clothing Company is his like TikTok tag. And he's like all over my feed, but like he basically like he does all that. He looks at all of the products, and then like he'll go and take a picture of the shelves, and he'll like block out he has like spreadsheets upon spreadsheets of like the mega corps, and he'll go and do all these deep diggings of like, even when, you know, you go to their website, it's not like proudly owned by Procter and Gamble. Like, no, it's like about us. We started as a small family, and it tells like the original story, but it doesn't talk about the, you know, $1 billion acquisition and then the changing of the ingredients and, you know, all that stuff. So he goes in and does all that, and he shows you like when you go to a conventional grocery store, I mean, almost everything on the shelf is owned by like the same 5 megacorps who also own each other. Yeah. They all own stock within each other. And, you know, as someone, as an entrepreneur and as a businessman, like I do believe in the power of positive business and capitalism, you know, and the power of like creating things through capitalism, but unchecked.
Yeah. We have captured capitalism now.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and when you involve, you know, corporate finances into the government, into it's like, it gets so intertwined in like in a disgusting way. I mean, it's like, it's ancestral to a degree. Well, so it's a big problem.
It is, and man, and RFK Jr. was talking about this, and I was looking at it kind of before him doing that same thing. I was like, just curious, and I'll spend my girlfriend knows it now. We've been together a couple of years. That some nights I'll be up till like 2 a.m. and she's like, we're in bed, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just reading about the Great War of 1812." I'm just these random rabbit holes. ADHD, and I did that with the same companies, and you realize they all own each other. But then I looked at the FDA, and then RFK Jr. talks about this. All of these regulatory agencies, the people that are on these boards, just hop back and forth from, say, Procter and Gamble. And so you'll have, say, the CEO of Pfizer works for Pfizer for, say, 10 years, or works as the director of the FDA. As he's on his way out, he gets promised, say, $1.2 million a year contract as an executive for Pfizer. But hey, we're going to lock this in for you, the super cushy job. Just pass some of these things through.
Totally.
And then it fucks the American population.
Yeah, indeed. And it's like, there are enough resources, and these people can make enough money. It doesn't have to be that way. It's sheer greed, and it sucks. But with all that said, it's like, I think it's really good to be aware of all, and I have to kind of check myself, because I can go deep and like when I get on and I'm then I'm like, dude, okay, this isn't my mission. This isn't my role to like fix all this stuff. Like, build an awareness, but I also got to move on. Yeah. And that's something that I've been working on too, of like, as far as just like being really aware of what I'm like taking in and what I'm allowing my like time and energy to be spent on, because I can totally, again, get really worked up on stuff.
Do you ever get sucked into politics? Like really amped up into it?
Not really amped up. No, that's like something, again, like, it's like, okay, build a sufficient awareness and like understand, but like also recognize what my impact within something can be. And if it's not there, then move on, you know? I definitely believe in the ideas of like, just that we can impact like our immediate community and our surrounding. You know, of course there's people that grow beyond that, and that's cool. You know, I don't know to what degree I may be able to influence other people, but I do know for sure that I get to influence, you know, my neighbors and my friends. And so like, just like trying to focus on that stuff, because, you know, if you decide to pursue that and like, of like being an influential leader within politics or within your community or whatever, then yeah, of course, like that's where you need to put your attention, and like, if it's going to pay back to some sort of change. But knowing that like me getting super deep into politics, like, is not going to change anyone around me, you know, because like,
you're like, I'm not running for office. I'm just wasting my fucking time.
Yeah. So what's the point? Whereas I can put that energy into, like a fucking cool jiu-jitsu company that's going to get people psyched to train, and hopefully turn some people on to training, which I know for sure is going to positively benefit their lives. And like, that's where I know I can have an impact. So it's like, okay, I only have so much energy, you know, and especially left over after I give what I want to give to my family and my personal development and my friends. I'm going to put that into something that hopefully will result in some sort of positive influence, rather than just like getting wound up about stuff, which is worth getting wound up over. Yeah. But again, if it's like,
it's kind of a waste of
the
the
end
energy.
result. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, it's so cool. Like hitting different jiu-jitsu gyms around San Diego and seeing your brand, people wearing the Flowhold jiu-jitsu. Like, I'm like, no, that's fucking cool, man. Let's do a shit.
I get pumped on it, dude. Yeah. And like, even still, like, just like packing orders and like just seeing like all the places that it's going to now. And, you know, just be like Nebraska, Idaho, New York, Japan, you know, just like seeing that is like, it's so rad to me, because I remember well the little, you know, getting one order and being like, yes. And then you're like, that's my aunt, you know, or like whatever. Yeah, it's like, it's awesome to me.
Did you think it was going to grow to this level? And then do you have like kind of plans of how you want to extend it out, or are you just going with the flow right now?
Yeah, I mean, I you know, like, I think you have, like, maybe I had plans, or like maybe thought it might grow to this level, to the degree of like when you're a kid and you're like, I'm going to play in the NFL. It's like, yeah, it'd be cool one day, but I also didn't have actionable steps to get there, or, you know, yeah, it wasn't like the way that I have plans now for the future, or what I think about. But it's definitely, it's cool that I would say, like, I mean, at a point I did realize like, okay, like, this is when it started to kind of like turn a page and be like, okay, this is growing, and realizing that like, okay, if I put effort into this, like it's gonna come out the other side, and being like, okay, I still don't know exactly to the degree like how big it's gonna grow or what it's gonna ultimately become, but I do know if I do the right things on a daily basis, and I think I have the right intentions, and I keep the correct energy about what I do, that it's gonna result in positive growth.
Yeah.
So that was for a while, just like kind of really taking it a step at a time.
And do you feel like because you're getting your black belt in jiu-jitsu, do you feel like that same mentality? Like, hey, it's just reps every day.
Totally.
Got to do this, do this, do this.
Yeah. I mean, I think both. Like, I think having a vision and having goals for the future is awesome. Like, I think, I forget, it's a good quote. I think it might be Eisenhower or somebody, but it says like, plans mean nothing. Planning is everything. So it's like, yeah, have those ideas, but like be agile and be willing to shift. Like you're never going to be able to, you can't, like you can describe your ideal life in 5 years, what that's going to look like, but a lot's going to happen between now and then. That might not even be actually what you want, And I think you need to be very considerate about what you want. Because if I sat here and was like, dude, I want Flowhold to be $1 billion company, like, okay, cool. Like, and that's a fine aspiration, but what does that actually mean? Like, is that going to take, to build that type of thing? Like, what is that going to take away from with my family life? Am I going to be able to give my children the attention that I know that I, be the father that I want to be the husband I want to be, have time to train? I'm a jiu-jitsu guy that runs a business. I'm not a businessman that does jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's not that way. So like, just being realistic with like your goals and what it's going to actually take.
So what would you tell like Noah that's like getting out of the military, mid-20s, hindsight being 2020?
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give Noah right now?
Yeah. I would encourage, I would encourage a few daily practices, I think, that have been massively influential for me. I would say have some prayer, meditation, visualization, and gratitude every day. And I really think if you can just start there, like things will start to untangle themselves and work themselves out. And I'm talking 15 minutes, not some crazy commitment. Like, and once you start to get like benefits from those things and you start to really like feel the effects, you're going to naturally lean into those things more, and it's going to grow, like that sort of practice. But like something that I did, and it is kind of corny, but like I started a gratitude practice. I started writing down 3 things. And what you hear, plenty of people suggest this type of advice. But one of the points that I remember was like them saying, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, in fact, like at least like one of those should be probably a pretty simple, like just like being like, dude, we have cans of this clean drinking water. I have another, we go to your sink right now and run it, and there's going to be, all the water we could possibly want. And like realistically, there are people that do not have that.
Yeah.
So being thankful for just like the simplest of things, and just pointing out 3 things a day that you are grateful for, because it does shift your mindset entirely to then something happens and you're like, oh, like that's gonna be one of my gratitudes for later. And so you literally are like starting to train your brain to be grateful for things. And then it's just like when you start to, it's like, okay, if you come into the room, we haven't seen each other, and like you've been thinking about all your problems and look, we've all got it. And many people significantly worse than you or I. We could all contemplate on those things and get stuck and mired down in our issues and our problems. Or we can try to shift, and yeah, those things are happening. That doesn't mean you ignore them, but what our focus is on and what we're trying to like get our subconscious to like rest in is the things that are good, because there's plenty of those things as well. So it's like, it's literally just a choice. It's a mindset decision. So if you're thinking about all that bad stuff, or you're thinking about all the good stuff, and you come in here and we interact, like, what's the better Corey going to be? Obviously it's a great for it. And then now like maybe I'm like, oh man, like Corey guy's cool. I got an idea for this thing. Like I'm going to get him, it's just like opportunities and better things are starting to open up for you, because you're just operating as like the best. You're not a different person. You're just the better version of yourself.
Yeah. Do you think Noah in his mid-20s would listen to you?
Motherfucker better because I choke his ass out. I'm way better at jiu-jitsu now.
Right? Like, hey man, you're gonna be a black belt one day. Let me show you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You know, I think some of this stuff, no. I mean, look, a lot of the things that I do now, I've gotten advice, or I listen to plenty of podcasts. I read books. Like I've heard, sometimes you just got to either hear it in the right way or at the right time, and things got to just click. Sometimes ideas are going to finally take effect when it's their time.
Yeah.
I don't know how all that stuff works. I can't say that for certain, but I can tell you for certain that has been a massive effect. And then what that evolved into is from just like writing those down. And then I would tell my wife about it. She's like, that's cool. And then she started writing hers down. And then we just started sharing them with each other. And instead of like, it's kind of a chore to like write it down. So then at night or at the dinner table, like we just be like, what are you grateful for?
Nice.
And it's kind of cheesy and it's kind of corny.
No.
But it's also like, as far as like a relationship builder, like it's a fun way to like learn about your partner's day and like hear about the stuff that's going on and like shift from.
It's so easy to get in the routine of come home, watch an episode, watch a movie, go to bed.
Yeah. And you can do all that stuff still too.
Yeah.
But you also might start to naturally like shift away from that stuff because maybe you're just gonna like have more energy and like it's like, a lot of that stuff's like it's like coping. You're like, dude, and I get it. And I still get there. But you're like, dude, I'm just drained. Like I need to turn my brain off. And like, but the problem is like when that's the cycle and that's happening every day and all the time, like that's not good.
Did you ever play video games?
Dude,
you ever get hooked in?
I did. I mean, like when I was a kid, I loved video games, like crushed Tony Hawk Pro Skater, of course, Halo, sick. When I was in college, my roommate, Kurt, who's still my good buddy, he had I guess it was PS3 at the time, but he had Call of Duty. And then I got into a Call of Duty phase.
That sucks you in, man.
But dude, yeah, I could like right now, if you were like, yo, I got a PS5 in there, like I would love it. But I just know like it's too addicting. Exactly. Yeah. So I just like I've never gotten a console like as an adult, knowing that I enjoy it too much and that it's like okay.
Dude, I'm the same way, and now I know it. I hadn't played video games in I don't know, maybe like 7 years or so.
Yeah.
All about Call of Duty. Fucking loved it. When I was like a kid in high school, I just spent hours just playing Call of Duty. It probably influenced part of my decision to join the military.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, dude, this is what it's going to be like. Fuck
totally.
But it was the beginning of this year, and I forgot what set it off, but I was like, you know what? I'm doing good. I think I'm going to treat myself. I'm just going to get a PlayStation 3 and play like the original Modern Warfare 2, original Black Ops. And I was like, just a treat. Just like maybe once a week I buy it. And then like 3 months go by, and like every night I'm just in like, the living room.
3 months go by, and you're like, "What happened? Where am I?"
Zero control because it's so fun.
I know.
You go through your daily life, and then you're just playing like matches back to back to back to back to back.
Yeah, and dude, and that is like, I mean, that's the back to like the flow state thing. It's like video games take you into the moment.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, those moments go by and you really have nothing to show for it at the end of it versus jiu-jitsu or surfing or, music, like whatever, these good things that also do that, but they're harder to do.
You're like, so I could have learned a second language by now.
It's like it's a cheap trick in a way of like you get in that moment and it's so fun and enjoyable and you're present, but then like there's nothing to show for it at the end of it. But that did remind me, I did actually get back in COVID. I didn't get a console, but I downloaded Fortnite on my iPad. And dude,
I couldn't get into it. You liked it?
Well, once you figure out like how to
that's
do
probably what it was. It was so foreign.
Yeah.
I was like, eh.
And again, it's COVID time, so there's like nothing going on. So I just and ultimately like once things kind of started to like get back to normal, I would still want I had to delete it. Like it wasn't like, okay, I'll like just only play like an hour or whatever it was. I was like, no, like this has to go.
There is no limiting it. Like once you turn it on, you're a slave.
No,
to
dude,
the game.
and like and I think sometimes having just like forcing, like if you don't have the self discipline, to like force disciplines, like
dude, I had to with that console. Once I realized it was becoming a problem, I told my girlfriend, I woke up that day, I'm like, fuck this console, I have to get rid of it. and I took it out back, and I took like a mini sledgehammer and just smashed it to pieces. Dude.
Really?
And because I was like, dude, if I throw it away, right, or if I give it to someone, I'm not learning the lesson because I paid like $200 online for it, right? If I sell it, I'm making
a good deal, I guess.
Right? I'm making my money back. But if I go out back and I like give dad myself, smash it with a sledgehammer, now I wasted all this money. I broke it. I taught myself a lesson.
There's a poor 11-year-old out there right now. This is like, no, I would have taken that.
Right? And it worked. I haven't picked it up, thought about it since.
Yeah. I mean, dude, it's like, I don't think there's anything wrong with, I mean, all these things are like escapes to agree. Like that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with this stuff, but like you, for me, it's hard to control those things. So like,
and that's what makes you great at, say, jiu-jitsu. That you could just get sucked into something and do it every day.
Well, that's what jiu-jitsu becomes, is like, some people that don't train, and they'll be like, you're making plans. Oh, like, can you do that? I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I got to go to training and then I'll be at the dinner or whatever afterwards. And they're like, damn, like you go to, like, how often do you train? You're like, oh, like 5-6 days, whatever. And they're like, wow, like that's really discipline. I can't, you can be like work out like that. And you're like, dude, it's not. I'm just hugging my bro. Literally an addiction. I'm not disciplined. Like I have to go do this. Like it doesn't take discipline. I mean, sure, there's days, of course, where you don't feel like training. You're hurried, you're just like not in the mood, and you make yourself go. Like,
did you ever have jiu-jitsu dreams?
Jiu-jitsu dreams?
So,
yeah.
Like when I first got into it, I was going to 10th Planet Oceanside.
Yeah.
And I was going like 5 days a week. And it was a few months into that, and I'd wake up and I'd be like leg locking, like strangling my sheets. I'm like wrestling my sheets, and I wake up, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, I have like, well, yeah, I get weird like nightmares sometimes of like fighting. Yeah.
Like, speaking of that, what's it like rolling with Jocko?
Awesome. I mean,
is he just
a man?
Is he a pressure guy or is he just a flow guy?
Have you fucking seen him? Yeah, he's been really into his guard lately. Just like, really flowy, easygoing. No. Jocko's a pressure, old school, like, yeah, exactly what you'd imagine.
Because he grew up in the gi, right?
Yeah, I guess. Well, so he left Fabio's with Dean. Like the whole thing was like Dean was, I guess, training for MMA and ADCC and wanted to do more no-gi, and Fabio Santos, who like they all started under. I guess I don't. This is all like my second hand, like what I don't know factually exact, but my understanding of it. Wasn't psyched on it. Traditional kind of mentality, like should be training the gi, and they all kind of like left. So I mean, I think maybe Jocko was like, I think he was like a purple belt at the time when they left. So, and I think they started focusing. So I mean, I think Jocko's always been more or less gi and no gi. I mean, we all train like all of our training like with like the training sessions we do with like Jocko and the other black belts and stuff from the gym. Like it's all no gi these days. And I came up in both, in the gi and no gi, and I've gone through phases, being in the military and traveling and training at different gyms. I've been at gyms where we did like just gi, and these days I do 95% no gi, but it's just more like situational of like the training sessions that I want to be at with other good people, like happen to be no gi. If they were gi, I would happy to be put on the gi more.
And it feels like it's faster. You get more reps in when you're no gi because you're not getting stopped by the grips, and you can just really flow through.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different version of the same game that I think both rule sets are quite fun.
If you're trying to convince somebody to go try jiu-jitsu,
because it's all the time.
It's I want to get your line because I have tons of buddies, and they're all like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll try it. Never come. They always flake out. So if you're trying to get somebody to convince them to do jiu-jitsu, what are you going to say?
Well, one thing that I do tell people, jiu-jitsu there's so many benefits to training. There's obviously like learning how to fight and having like a form of self-defense. Like that's a crucial skill. Having like getting in shape. Great. Like you're building your cardio, you're building your muscle, like awesome. Community and friendships. You're going to make friends in jiu-jitsu like quicker than any other sport because all of the normal social barriers are quickly blasted through. Like you're freaking on top of me, like sweating in my eyeball, like grabbing my nuts accidentally or on purpose, Corey, you weirdo.
Speaking of that, I was rolling the other day. I never done it before. I was rolling with somebody and I think stuffing a takedown or something. We get back up, I change levels on them and I stiff arm out and just dick and balls right in my hand. Just grab it.
I mean, it's going to happen for sure. That might even be a reason you might, for some people to start training, but that's going to happen. And also like the idea of like the amount of trust that we place in each other immediately, even if we're total strangers, like, hey, I'm going to basically allow you to put me in positions that are going to like brutally injure me if you don't stop when I ask you to stop. And you're going to agree that I'm going to do that and you're going to do the same. So like there's all that stuff. But even what I tell people is like, if you stripped all of that away, if there were no other benefits, I would continue to do jiu-jitsu just because of how fun jiu-jitsu is. So even with all the other benefits, it's so fun, dude. It's just a good time. I think there's like an innate thing in us to like every little kid, like they're grappling, they're wrestling, like, and I grew up doing, we were super into like WCW wrestling, and like me and I had a bunch of neighborhood boys around. We were always like in the field, in the grass, on the trampoline, like just like wrestling, like, and it's not choreographed WCW. You're just like grappling and you don't know what you're doing. And you're maybe borrowing some rules from WWF or whatever, but like
it's ultimately just primal in us.
It's primal. It's in us. It's the oldest competitive, you go back to like the original Olympic, like fighting and wrestling. It's like, it's in us. And, I think there's something about that is like so incredibly enjoyable and fulfilling and fun. So
hell yeah, man. Well,
yeah. So I don't really have much personal stuff going on. It's all through the business. So Flowhold on Instagram is the best place. Got some TikTok stuff going to Flowhold SD, like Flowhold San Diego is the website. So if anybody wants to get some gear, some jiu-jitsu and MMA stuff, gis, or rash guards, just shirts, hats, any of that shit.
Hell yeah, man. It's some rad merch. I love it.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's a real pleasure, man. I'm super grateful to be able to do what I do and like be involved in the jiu-jitsu community. And when people are psyched on it, like nothing gets me happier than that. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Dude, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. It's good talking to you.
It was great, really enjoyable. But
all right, bye everybody.
Later.